Hello again, Mike Draper here. I have Dani Bates, the one and only. She's been with me from the beginning of my Instagram, TikTok shenanigans. She's been here since I basically started. I don't know who followed who first. We were just chatting about this, but Dani, thanks for being here. I really appreciate you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, we were just chit-chatting about how I'm in my garage, you're in your family room, and we're making it work, making it look good, and tearing it up. So, and we were just chatting about so your story. Could you give a quick, because people might not know who you are, and so what is your quick story that is going to relate to what we're talking about today?
So I was widowed 3.5 years ago. My husband died by suicide, and I had 2 little girls at the time. They were 3 and 10 months. And I started sharing stuff on social media, more for my friends and family to kind of be like, guys, it's not great when you take your life. It really sucks for those of us left behind. And I had a video go viral. This is back in 2019 where things that went viral were a couple million, But I got 12 million views on a video of my daughter, and it just kind of grew from there. So I've just done suicide prevention since then, talked about being a widow, all the fun things.
Yeah.
Parenting alone.
Single life, parenting alone, the aftermath, the grief, the
dating,
the pain, the humor in the pain sometimes, and dating, that's fun, and
so fun.
It's so much fun. I'm so excited.
Love it.
It's interesting how certain accounts will resonate with a lot of people based on how hard of a topic it is to talk about, or just how not many people are talking about that certain topic. So suicide is a whole topic in itself, right? And then being a widow is a whole topic in itself. Single parenting is a whole other topic in itself. And for you, this all happened literally in a moment, right? All this, your life just changed in a moment, right? And so and for you to be able to talk about this on this podcast, for you to be able to talk about it on social media and share your process, it says a lot. It's huge, right? It's one thing that I've learned, and I've kind of mentioned it before we started recording here, was I didn't realize how many widows and widowers are following me, right? My account's all single life, dating, single parenting stuff, which obviously inevitably would include people who have been widowed. And it wasn't until I did some Instagram polls that there's about a 1%. It was when I did the poll, it was over 1%, which would equate to 2,000 people or so. But I would estimate at least 1,000 of the audience is widows, and so a lot of them have messaged me, and they say they relate. They don't comment. They don't. The ones that at least follow me, they don't comment. They don't talk too much about it. But they say hey, I was widowed and this is what happened, and I really appreciate X, Y, and Z, and so I you can talk about whatever you want to or not want to, but the whole reason I'm asking some of these questions is literally to help serve the people that do follow me, and I know follow you, and even ones that don't follow either of us that don't know what to do next, right? The whole name of the show, what's next, right?
That was one of the scariest parts of being widowed, was what in the hell am I gonna do with my life now?
Right. So what could you? So what was the life before he passed, right? So as far as the family dynamic, right? So were you a stay-at-home mom? Were you guys both working? Or what did that kind of look like?
He was the sole provider. I recently left the Mormon church, but we were Mormon, so very traditional. Not he was a patriarchal a-hole, but he was the moneymaker. Sure. I was the stay-at-home mom. I loved it though. I loved being a stay-at-home mom. I was built for that. I could be with my kids all day, every day, and not be. It's bad. I need more friends, not children. But
that's all right though.
Yeah. But I love it. But it was just very traditional. We were very happy. He had been through a lot of childhood trauma, but was the healthiest, happiest he'd ever been. He had always wanted a family, and he always said he didn't really want to get married, but he wanted children, and so he thought maybe he should get married first. So I happened to be the person that he chose. So yeah, we had a great life. He was CFO of a group of dealerships, and also sold minivans. And so like living the life, we were very happy. We had 2 little girls and had lots of family support. He had some great friends. So just really just good.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So, like,
Yeah.
it helps paint the picture of how starkly your life changed, right?
Yep.
Because my mind immediately goes to, when I say change, right? There's tons of ways to interpret that, but what I think about is like in the immediacy,
Yeah.
he's earning income and you're not, and so it's like,
Yep.
well, either savings, family support, friend support, or you got to start making money. And
Yep.
why that's so starkly different is it changes your schedule. Now there's like daycare things, so like logistics just change in the
Yes.
immediate, and logistics don't care about your emotions. They don't care
Yeah.
about grieving time. They don't care about
Oh,
none of
totally.
that, right? So logistics.
That's one
is
thing I
just
always
that. So
talk
what was
about with like when it comes to like being widowed. I've heard people say like, "Oh, it's hard as a mother to lose your child even if they're adult." And then I've heard, "Oh, it's harder as the widow to take care of things after." I've heard both of these arguments, and I know that we shouldn't compare grief. However, I think
right,
that
for sure.
it's different in that, like, as a mother, you should never bury your child. You shouldn't bury your child should bury you. Like, my mom died a year before my husband died, and she was too young, but I buried her. She didn't bury me. That's different. So, like, that pain for losing your child, even as an adult, I can't even fathom. Logistically speaking, it is so hard on the remaining spouse because of financials, because of I'm trying to figure out what the F I do with my kids all day if I'm going to get a job. Like, and I don't have even dating. Like, that's one thing that's really different between like a divorcee and a widow, right? I don't have a parent to pass them off to for the weekend or for the next week, or it's all me. Everything's me now. And so it's just like, I have to do all the doctor's appointments. I have to do all of the things. So there's complications that come with divorce too that I don't have to deal with. I don't have to deal with like a dramatic, ex or something like that. Yeah, co-parenting is rough, but there are some other things that just make it so logistically hard to move on after that happens. Like, it's just a lot.
There's a lot. It's all at once too. So
Yeah.
I really feel for you, right? And the more we kind of like unfold this and like talk about it, I don't realize certain little details where it's like, oh yeah, that too. Oh yeah, that too. Right?
Yeah.
You bring up some good points. Like, yeah, single parenting. Like for myself, right? Ellie's mom is here, and so we split time about 50-50, and that's a whole topic. But like, it's passing out. You talk about passing off kiddo for the weekend or whatever, right? Like, that is super helpful. I've learned that, like, I'm grateful for that, honestly. Like, the time away gives me my own personal time. I personally tend to use that time to like crank out a lot of work, and goals. That way, when I'm with her or she's here, I can focus on her and still my goals, because I want her to see how I work towards them and what I'm doing. I don't want her to like not know. But it's just a different pace for sure.
Yeah. And you get someone else that just loves your kid endlessly and wants the best for them. So you don't have to worry about her when she's gone. You know what I mean? Like, no one loves their kid like a parent. So that's one thing that's been hard for me, is like, even when people who really love my kids take my kids away from me for like a break or whatever, it's different. It's different than their parent, you know?
Yeah, it's not the same. I understand that for sure. And so there's kind of two topics here, right? One is that I think could help some people, and this is why I ask these questions, right? So there's like the widow side of like, what did you do next as a widow? And then the topic of suicide, right? So I don't know how much you dove into your husband as far as like why he did what he did, if you know, or like if that's a big, that whole topic of being self-aware of, hindsight's always 20/20, right?
Yeah.
And so I've had the luxury of talking to, I would say, dozens of families, spouses, kids, grandparents, everybody, from my time as a police officer having to deal with suicides. That would be one of the first ones there.
Gosh, I totally forgot that you're a police officer. You have dealt with this for sure.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, yeah. Suicide is
I forgot about that.
no shock. I've never had to deal with it on a personal side. No one personally that I know. No one super close to me has, right? Like I got some military buddies that did, but like just not the same as like someone I see all the time. Not my spouse. Like holy hell.
Right. Or your
Totally
friend
different.
or whatever.
But definitely
Right.
yeah, exactly. Definitely dealt with dozens and dozens of those calls where I'm like the primary lead officer. So, and I see the aftermath for a few hours, right? I don't see the days and weeks and months after. So that's where I lack the experience or the knowledge. So do you know what led up to it? And I asked that to try to help other people recognize certain things in their partners.
Yeah, obviously I'm super open about it because I mean that's why I started talking about it, because nobody did. And so I was like, well, I can. But I'll never know exactly why for sure, because that's the nature of suicide. I can never know. It's not like he was able to say this is exactly why I'm doing this before he did it, because I didn't know he was going to do it. But I have and over the years too, my opinion can slightly change and adjust, and I'm like, maybe more hindsight helps me. Maybe it removes me farther from the situation, so I don't see it as clearly. I don't know, but I'll give you my current reality and how I feel about it right now. I believe that he'd struggled with suicide most of his life. I remember him telling me that when he was 5 years old, he said that he wanted to die. And that's a weird thing for a 5-year-old to say, like that's not in their vernacular. And so he had to get on antidepressants at like a really young age. He had a very abusive father, who is long gone. Otherwise, I would be in prison right now because
fair enough.
I would hurt him. But he,
that sucks.
Yeah, he was very abusive. And so Denny kind of like, his name's Denny and my name's Dani, and it's really weird, and that's a problem. But just so you know,
well, yeah.
Everyone's like, it's so cute. I'm like, no, it's not. It's just so obnoxious. Then we named our first kid Winnie. That was a mistake.
Oh, why?
But it's so cute, though. It's such a cute name.
It is a good name. It is a good name.
Anyways, he struggled his whole life, but he had been to therapy. He'd done a lot of healing. He'd worked through a lot of it. He was even in therapy on and off throughout our marriage. He definitely struggled with OCD, and I also struggle with OCD. And looking back now, I can see that he had it. Just processing.
Yeah, you're good.
So he had become like super balanced in his life for the first time in his life. Like when I met him, he would like only be drinking energy drinks and eating tuna fish all day and going to the gym 2 times a day, 7 days a week. Or he would be eating McDonald's for 3 meals a day. Like just very extremes in all of his life. And I think that was the OCD kind of showing up. I'm not a mental health professional, but after discussing this with his therapist and others, and he had finally like he was eating normally, he was exercising normally, he was like financially, he'd always been really extreme one way or the other, and he was finally like so balanced. He was like really at a healthy place in his life, and was doing really well. But I think that he had never fully healed those things from his past, even though he'd attempted to. I don't think he actually healed them because he wasn't open with me that he struggled with suicidal ideation. I had no idea. I knew that he'd struggled with it as a small child, but I didn't even know if he struggled with it in his like teens and stuff, which I'm sure now, because suicide doesn't come out of nowhere, right? It's a process. It's like no one just flips and decides to die by suicide in a minute. That's not how it works. So, but I think we found out about some abuse going on in our extended family, and about a family member of ours who had been sexually abused for 10 years of her life. She finally opened up about it. And I think that triggered his PTSD from what he experienced as a child. And because he was fine and then he wasn't. And I think when you don't really heal all of those wounds from your past and you get a trigger like that, it can just, do a whole flip, because he was fine and then the next day he wasn't, and he was like weird, and he was like, he would stay up for a week. He would stay up all hours of the night. He wasn't eating. He wasn't sleeping. He was pacing a lot. And the man got stressed out. Like he was a stressed out person. Like if he had a bad month at work, he'd be like, oh my gosh, my life is over. I have to quit my job. And I'm like, okay, all right, we're doing this again. You've told me that every month of our whole marriage.
Right.
So I thought it was another one of those, just maybe a little more extreme. You know, I couldn't tell that it was like so deep in him, but he wasn't like he was a complete weirdo and joking all the time. He wasn't joking that week. He wasn't being as funny. He wouldn't laugh when I'd like tease him about things. And like, it was very weird, but we were talking about all the things we needed to do. Okay, let's get therapy for you. Let's get therapy for me. Let's get therapy as a couple. Let's get our kids figured out. How can we protect our kids so that they don't have to deal with this trauma? How can we prevent this? And then one night he just left and didn't come back. And it was within I think 24 hours that he was gone.
So how soon after that family event that kind of started it sounds like a week or two after?
It was a week,
Does that sound right? Mm-hmm. A week after the incident with family. Okay, interesting. Yep. So, because I was going to bring up that this applies to not just suicide, but to other like stressors in people's lives, is that like something can happen. It's like an event, right? Like the family issue where it triggers something. Now that doesn't, when I hear the word trigger, I think of like immediacy and like it's happening now. And 1 week is immediacy, right? Yeah. But it's not like a moment in time, like, boom, he like heard this, did this, right? And so I say that for people to recognize that you can be, a trigger can happen, an event can happen that makes you relive prior events in your life, or you start thinking of a new thing, or it's a new stress. So like divorce or a breakup or some kind of abuse situation, or something that helps, or not helps, but something that reminds you of a prior situation. And that little phase, I say little, but that phase can last, weeks, months, right? So, for me, it happens like whenever, being a police officer, there's, I've seen all kinds of stuff, all the cliche things you might be thinking of. And so certain things still trigger certain things. And like, for me, I'm pretty good at like managing it, but sometimes it'll stay with you for me, it tends to just be like in the moment, like for 20 minutes to a couple hours. And that's about it. I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing. I can't say it. Yeah. Putting it in
compartmentalizing. Yes. Yeah.
But then I know that there's bigger stressors, like when I had to go back to the courts to renegotiate parenting schedules and parenting times and stuff with like, that's like a looming ongoing thing, right? For months. And it's just kind of sitting there. So
we were talking about like how we were going to help this family member, how we were about to buy a house, and we were like, okay, now let's buy a house that has a little like an extra bedroom or a little apartment in it so this family member can come and stay with us. So I think that it just kept, and we were talking about all those things and how we were going to fix it, and I think it was just too much. And then without sleeping and without eating, and it makes you literally delusional. So all those things that seem horrible, that are horrible, but they seem horrible, they seem 5 million times worse than they would if you were sleeping and eating and taking care of yourself and whatever. So I think it just got worse and worse in his mind, and he wasn't communicating that. And honestly, like I get asked this a lot too. This is like the big question. Do you think you could have done it, like stopped it? Do you think you could have? And I know people feel uncomfortable asking that, but it's a question that people want to know. And I don't, because he wasn't willing to be open with me. And so I think that's where like that healing before the trigger is so important. Like if you are able to deal with your triggers from being a police officer in the moment and work through it, that tells me that you've healed a lot and that you've done a lot of work on yourself. Where like, if it were to affect you, and the divorce stuff is more fresh, so you obviously haven't done as much healing, and so that can trigger things worse. Do you know what I mean? So I think you working on those things and doing as much as you can beforehand is what makes the difference in the long run. Because I think if he would have communicated to me, I would have been like, get your butt in therapy, like go do something about it, But I think it's like we could always go to the toxic masculinity thing where men are like, I don't talk about my feelings. I don't have big feelings.
Right.
Which was a big part of his
real.
life.
I think so.
Absolutely. I think that's why a lot of emergency responders and police officers and vets struggle with suicide. You guys are the highest risk. Like, you guys and dentists.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you know that dentists are at high risk? Dentists.
Dentists?
Yes, and veterinarians.
Oh, interesting.
Veterinarians are another one that is very strange, but
That's it.
high risk.
I almost like want to understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many. That's so interesting. I want to like
Speechless.
that. I want to read into that a little bit more.
But I think a lot of it is in those professions. You have not the veterinarian one necessarily. I don't know enough about that. But I know in police officers, in veterans, in,
Sure.
firefighters, it's toxic masculinity at its highest, right? And I think it's getting better.
Right.
But I do think there's a lot of that pressure to not have feelings and not, I just saw a complete murder scene of 3 children, but I'm fine.
Right. It's an interesting combination because of like the type of person to be, say, it's all relative, a good police officer, a good soldier, a good firefighter, right? You got to be a tough person. Because you're gonna see some shit. So you
can't fall apart.
You can't fall apart in the moment, right? Like, you just have to be very logistical, solve the problem,
right?
Do your job as quickly, efficiently, and safely as possible while maintaining, like, there's so many variables. It's really an intense job, but it's really it was really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Oh,
if I could
can't
guarantee
imagine.
my safety and get paid more and see my daughter more, that was a big reason.
Sounds like a few ifs,
Honestly, if I could guarantee my safety, like money, I don't care about, like, money is whatever, but like if I can see Ellie more, like, to where I'm at now, I would still do it for a while. It's pretty fun. I had a good group of people there, but it's the combination of, like, the type of person, the mentality you need as far as like being tough. You have to be able to just go numb for a little bit, especially in the moment.
Yeah.
But then the people that do see those things, they're going to be at the most risk because of that repetitive exposure to trauma. They need to be able to talk about it, but like,
and have their feelings, but not in the moment. They need to be able to shut down and just do the task.
Yeah, it's a hard combination of, like, the type of person that can shut down and just shut it down and just do the job, and then to, like, open it up later. That is a unique individual.
And you have to be able to open it enough to deal with it, but not to let it affect you on the next job, because it's not like you get like a 3-week break in between murders. Like, so you don't have like a month to deal with your issues. Like, so that it's just like a really bad situation. But it definitely is clearly why, like, it makes sense why that's. Denny wasn't a vet or a first responder, but he did have, his dad was a vet. And I think his dad was also like, he would like beat the crap out of this kid when Denny was like 3 and be like, if you don't stop crying and be a man, then I'm going to keep hitting you. Like, that was the kind of, so dynamic. He had toxic masculinity drilled into him, like the worst kind of manliness drilled into him, from a very young age. So, but yeah, no, you're right. It'd be interesting to go, and now I have to think more about the dentist and veterinary thing, because I've never thought about that in detail.
My mind went to, like, the amount of stress it takes to get to that point in your life, the amount of work, and then the amount of stress that job takes, and then you have to be right with, like, your decisions on the job, and so, like, teeth is permanent, right? If you mess up something, and then, like, and that can apply to so many, so many career fields. So it's interesting why dentists and veterinarians,
I think veterinarians see a lot of trauma. It's maybe on a different level, but I do think they see trauma, and, like, people bring in their dogs that were hit by a car, or the people have to put their cat down or whatever. Like, I'm sure that can be really traumatic.
But in an animal,
yeah, totally. So I'm sure that, I don't know. You'll have to interview a veterinarian and a dentist.
So I know, I could think of one person. The last thing I wanted to kind of touch on that one was, my experience as a police officer. I did get the added benefit of talking directly to attempted suicide survivors, right? So
Yeah.
people that tried to commit suicide, and then they did not complete the task, right? And so there's varying degrees. I'll say real quick that like people that did do a complete full attempt at it and survived, we asked them like, hey, like what goes through your mind right before and then right after, and the immediate first thing after the attempt and they didn't die is that like I made a mistake, right? The moment they jumped from the ledge, the moment they jumped from the ladder to hang themselves, or they pulled the trigger, and they're still here. I'm still seeing stuff. Like they immediately regretted it. Every single one of them, 100% regretted the decision.
I've heard that too from every attempted. Every person who I know who has attempted suicide has said the same thing.
Yep, immediate regret. The moment they step off the ledge or whatever, like, and now they're dealing with like physical ailments because of they survived the fall or of the gun or the neck thing. So like, immediate regret. But they're grateful they're here and they survived it, is what they say. On to the widow side. This is such
easy transition.
Conversation. I love this. So good. Enough about suicide. Let's talk about let's talk about you by yourself over here, right?
Such fun topics.
I really like talking about this because it's not about me wanting to know your like specific story. I want to know your story. Like I do enjoy learning about you and like in hearing how you process. But for me, I do know how many people are going to hear this, and they're not going to realize like, oh my God, they're going through the same thing as I went through. And like, yes, someone gets it, and like they're going to feel validated.
Totally,
and they're going to feel heard and seen because they are like. I want them to know that they are seen. Yeah,
that's what I felt when I started watching your videos about dating.
Yeah. So we're all out here just doing our thing, trying to survive. So you're now a widow. You have a 10-month-old and a 3-year-old. Is that right?
Yep, little girls.
10 months and 3-year-old. Gosh, it's so little.
I know.
3 years is such a fun age, though.
I know. It's so fun.
And so Ellie's almost 8. It's such a fun age.
Aww.
And I miss her being 3 years old sometimes.
I know.
But, it's so little.
I know.
But, okay. So he drove away. He drove somewhere, you said, and then he never came back. So, okay. Yeah. So you figure out he did the deed. He's gone. We can get past that part. That's fine. And then,
can I say something really quick?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. So, committed suicide is kind of like an outdated term. So what we say now is that he died by suicide, just because commit kind of gives this thing like it was like a crime or like a he committed adultery or whatever. You know what I mean? Where it's like, no, he died of an illness. You know what I mean? Like it was, you know, PTSD and depression. So just wanted to put that out there. We just say died by suicide.
Died by suicide. No, I appreciate that. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, and I had never heard it phrased like that, but it makes sense. So I thank you for that.
I just tell people when I hear that, but I think it's okay to educate.
So dies by suicide. You guys figured that part out, and
the poor officer who did the death notification. It was his first death notification ever.
Oh, I remember mine. Holy hell.
I've run into him since then, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. To be hard.
That's a whole other topic. I could do a whole podcast on police life, but like that's not what I talk about. But like that's a hard one because it's not like Grandpa passed away, right? That was 87 years old, and he's like, yeah, we kind of knew he was going to pass away. Like, thanks, officer. It's the sudden, it's the unknown. Some of the like the preventable deaths, those ones are hard. So like car crashes, those are brutal.
And he had to see my little girl coming up to me and being like, Mom, he'll be home soon. Like, that has to mess with you, you know?
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yep, there's one I'm thinking of. Thank you. No,
sorry. Speaking of PTSD.
I'm just teasing. Totally fine.
Okay.
But it does. It brings up, if I have a 13-year-old, right, we're doing CPR on the mom in the next room over, and she dies, and there's no dad. And so now the kids are left with the grandparents, right?
Oh my gosh.
And you can 5-year-olds asking like, hey, what are they doing with mommy been there? Like trying to like peek, and we're like, fuck, like trying to like keep the kid out. And just that whole process of like, we don't know if they've ever had a conversation of what death is. Do they know what it means? We talked to the grandparents, which were there, and they said they didn't want to do the conversation. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, okay, that's I'll do it for you.
So
like,
you
that's
guys
fine.
had to do it?
Yeah, I had like establish their level of education of like what words mean what, right? So before we talk about like death, like, hey, do you know that a flower? Like, do you have any cats or dogs that have you ever had any cats or dogs in the past, or fish or something that like we can talk about the word death and like they understand like gone forever. Like the whole point was trying to make sure they understand what gone forever means and death, and that is mom right now, right? And so it's like trying to figure out the vocabulary. It's like with any child abuse investigation, you have to figure out their vocabulary, level of education, their understanding of what it means, all these like kind of steps to make sure they know logistically what just happened as far as gone forever.
Man,
that's a whole topic.
It's not easy.
No, not an easy one. And so you get notified by the police officer, and that scene happens. I'm guessing there's a funeral, I'm assuming?
Yep. We did a funeral like a week after.
Okay. And then after funeral, once I want to know about once things kind of settle down from like the shock and awe of someone passing, that scene ends, which it might never end, but like the initial burst, right? Of so I would say after the funeral at some point, a week later, I don't know. And you're like, okay, logistically, shit, what do I do now? What was that point like?
Well, I think it's different for everybody. The way I deal with grief, I did it when my mom died the year before. I go straight into action. I'm like, I have to get shit done. So I go straight into like, okay, where are all our bank accounts? I got to make sure I got all his passwords. Do I have his, you know what I mean? Like organizing, making sure everyone's aware. I was like on the phone all the time, going to the bank, just making sure everything was moved into just my name. Like just all of the things that you have to, like signing a new will, because I'm like, worst case scenario, what if I get hit by a car tomorrow and my kids just lost, but who knows where my kids go? Like, so I had to I just got shit done that first, like even that week before the funeral, I was just like on top of it. And so it's like a coping mechanism, not necessarily healthy.
You're reliving it like every transaction. I just thought about that. Like, getting a new password, getting a new ID card, getting new loan documents, mortgages, like every little transaction of getting his name off of something or notifying someone, you're reliving that because they're going to ask, oh, why, right? And they're like, oh, my husband died, and then it's like... And
it doesn't stop, because there will be 3 years later where someone calls me and says, hey, I just found this from when Dani Bates had the exam done on him, and and I'm like, oh, he died 3 years ago. And they're like, and then there's the whole uncomfortable conversation. And it's like, it doesn't stop for sure. It's every time I have to pull out the death certificate, it's like that definitely is triggering every time. It just reminds you. But I was definitely trying to get.
That is so ongoing.
Yeah. Yep. It's weird. It still hasn't stopped.
Of respect and I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I just really stood out to me that that is literally ongoing, right? With even on, I say this because I want people to know that I hear it now and I see it. So any document where it's I think of school, because Ellie just she's second grade now, but mom's name, dad's name, then where's the second parent, and the questions that
and
you
who can
ask,
check out your kids, and
who should your kids out from daycare
on when I registered Winnie for kindergarten a year and a half ago now. She's in first grade right now, and when I was registering for it, I remember they didn't have an option for it was are you divorced, and that it was it said, is there a custody agreement on the registration papers? They asked if there's a custody and if there's a divorce, but nothing about death. And I was it just was a really oh shit, my kid is not experiencing something that every kid experiences. Do you know what I mean? It's just so, it's something that and while there's still not that many, I mean, what is it? 50% divorce, marriages end in divorce. But for her to be 5 years old starting kindergarten, it was she's the weirdo now. She is the one who doesn't have a dad, that everyone else has a dad. Even if their parents don't live together, she still has a dad. And so that has been definitely hard for me. For Winnie, she when she did her presentation on who she is, how they have their about me stuff that they do in these younger grades. And she she was sobbing the night before and saying, I don't want to put pictures of my dad on there because I don't want to have to tell people what happened. Like,
oh my gosh.
So it's weird. Those things that you don't even, like, I didn't consider that back when he died because she was 3. She wasn't even preschool yet. So I'm starting to have to, I feel like I grieve a new thing every time they have a birthday. It's like, he's not here for this year now. He's not here for this cool experience. Piper's in preschool now. He doesn't get to be here for preschool or for her kindergarten. And like, you grieve different things that will happen the rest of their lives. When they get married and have babies, I will still be grieving that they can't have, they will be grieving that their dad can't be here, you know? So yeah, it definitely doesn't stop the...
So what is one thing you do to help that? When those new things come up, what's a trick or what's a mechanism or how do you manage that?
My way of handling it, and I've learned it is, I don't want to be biased, but I think it's the best way to handle it because I think because Denny was in denial of a lot of his stuff for so long, I have become the opposite of that. Like, I am like, so like, we feel this feeling right now. Like, if I'm sitting, like, for example, I went to a Walmart to return a gift that I had bought Denny. This is like 6 months after he died. I'm like, I got to return this gift that I bought him because I'm never going to use it. It was like a sous vide meat cooker thing. And I'm not going to use it. So I'm taking it to Walmart and I'm like, they'll return it for me, right? Like, they'll understand. Right. I gave it to him and he died 3 months later, so he never had a chance to use it. So I like go to the thing and up to the register and the lady is like, I'm so sorry, we can't do that. And I burst into tears and I'm like, my husband is dead. Like, and I don't try and use that, but I felt it in the moment. It was just like such a harsh reminder. Like, you can't get this $100 back because your husband died and it sucks because he's just never going to use it again. And like, but I try and make it a goal to just feel it in the moment. Like, if Winnie is just feeling it, then I want her to cry. I want her to feel it out. I want her to sob. I want her to get all the feelings out. I want her to talk about it because that's the only way we're actually going to deal with it. If we just pretend like it didn't happen, if we just keep ignoring it, if we just say, oh, daddy's in heaven and everything's fine. Like, even that, like, not that I don't believe in heaven. I don't know what I believe in. I'm agnostic. But that doesn't fix he's still not here. So like, let's deal with the fact that he's just not here. And it's okay that we're sad about that. And it's okay that it sucks. And it's okay to like be mad when I have to go up to the registration place and say, hey, I'm not divorced. My husband's dead. So what do you want me to put on this paper? Like, it's okay, you know, that it's miserable because it is.
Is that a thing for widows? I've noticed that because I've gotten the comment a few times, only a handful of times, to where I was like, I think there's something there where it's like the option of like, you know, single, married, separated, divorced. There's no widow option on like any form I've seen. And I don't feel like I'm single because I had a partner for so many years, right? And we had 2 beautiful children together and had a happy, loving marriage. What do you put? You put single on there or separate?
Yeah, if I have to, or I'll make my own category, right? Widowed. Dead husband category.
I love that. Just own it. That's interesting. Yeah. So it's because I never see that in any form.
Sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. And
oh, really? Okay. I haven't noticed it. Okay. So what did you do? So like, to get back on it, because that was good. Those are good tangents, though. I like it.
Sorry.
No, it is. I helped nurture that tangent for sure. Like, what would you do next? Like, how did you keep moving forward? You had so you mentioned the logistics of like getting your names over all the loans, housing, banking statements, all that stuff, ID cards or whatever. And then, so you had to get a job, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Well, so for the first, yeah, for real. Well, so Denny and I were actually saving up to buy a house. So we did have, and we were going to pay the 20% or whatever, you know, up front for the house. So we did have some savings. And then, also some people did like some fundraisers for me that were super awesome. Like, people went completely out of their way to do really awesome things for me and my girls in those early months. And then like at Christmas, someone sponsored our Christmas for like the first 2 years. So we were really taken care of. And I felt really grateful because I felt like I needed to be at home with my girls for that first year. I was like, I can't abandon them. And you do get, as a widow, usually you get Social Security if your spouse has paid anything into taxes. Then you get.
That's right.
But it's not much. Doesn't even cover like my rent, you know. So, but we were able to live off of that the first year. I am very careful with my money because I've had to make it last. Then I got a job as a seamstress. I've like sewn for a few years. And so I just did some seamstress work for a baby clothing company for a while. And then I took this last summer off, and then I haven't started working yet. Again, I do make some money through social media, you know, a couple $100 a month. So all just kind of like adds up. And then I'm going to start, I do like gift wrapping every holiday season and make a couple grand doing that. You know, I try and.
You got to follow. We got to get you some brand deals.
I know. I've gotten the ones where they're like, we'll give you 10% off if you share a code. And I'm like, I don't have time for that.
Sorry. No.
But when I do put out a good reel, I get a couple $100, you know, like when, I don't know if you saw Piper's reel that went viral recently. It got like 14 million views, but really fast. But it was her talking about, it's the younger sister. And she was saying how she's sad because her Winnie lost her tooth, and she was sad that Winnie came out of my vagina first because that means they can't be twins. And she says the word vagina so clearly. Yep. And she says vagina so clearly. Yeah. So that got me a couple $100. So it's good when people share my stuff. It's super helpful. But yeah, and my stuff isn't for everyone. So I get it. Like, it's heavy. So it's not like I can just get an easy following that, you know what I mean? Like, it's heavy stuff, but it definitely is healing to be able to share that stuff. So it's worth it, but it's definitely heavy. So I'm not like to a wide audience.
Like BetterHelp. I think it's called BetterHelp.
Yeah.
I feel like
I should reach out to them.
That would be pretty good.
Yeah.
If they start asking your rate, like, you could call me first, and
I'll message you and ask
I'm
you.
all about the creator economy, and like I love finding out people's like rates and everything. So like I have an okay
a good
understanding.
Idea. Yeah, I would love to be able to just do social media and stay home with my girls most of the time. I mean, social media is a lot of work. I don't think people realize how, even just doing it like mostly for fun and for educational purposes. Yeah. It's a lot of work. So trying to make money off of it, it's a lot, but at least I could be with my kids, you know? It's just hard sending my kids like to the neighbors for the day so that I can work, or to like, and hope in 2 years my kids will both be in school full time, so that'll help a lot. But I'm hoping I can make it through the next 2 years before I have to get like a full-time job.
Yeah, school helps a ton. I get a lot done when she's there, even though it's like she's in school for like what is it, 7 hours or something like that. So like with drop off and pick up, there's like an hour missed right there. Yeah. So you get like 5.5, 6 hours of like dedicated time. Yeah,
everyone was like, "Oh, when Piper gets in preschool, you'll have so much time." I'm like, I have 1 hour 2 times a week.
It's pretty minimal. Like and it's usually enough to like. It depends on where their preschool's at. If it's like, I remember Ellie's preschool was like a 20-minute drive.
Yep.
And so it's like
15 minutes. Yeah.
I'd go there. I would go to the gym, get groceries, pick her up, and like that was it.
Yep.
Like that was my.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, my kids. I'm really lucky. I really do think some people just get like easier kids than other people. I know parenting has to do with it, but I do feel like I have really easy kids. Like they have their trauma issues, but like other than that, they're just really good, obedient, bright, happy kids. I'm very lucky. Easy. If there's a God up there, God was like, your life's going to be shit, so I'm going to give you some easy kids so that they can get you through it, because, you know.
Funny. No, Ellie's been super easy. Like, she only threw up, I think, 3 times as a baby, and twice was because, like, I just fed her, and I was, like, playing with her too rough.
Yeah.
I'm like, that was a fucking count.
That's
but,
cute. Yeah, that's your own fault, dude.
Things like that. Like, she had, like, 2 bad blowout diapers, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, she never cried, really. Like, I don't know.
My kids had those issues, but they're obedient. They listen. They're like they both are sticklers for the rules. They both they'll keep other kids in line if they're not listening at school.
She's a rule follower for sure.
Yeah,
it's funny. Like I follow rules, like, as you know, the whole police officer life. Like it's kind of inherent in me.
Yeah,
but I'm pretty laid back because I learned to like not sweat the small things, and there's lots
Yeah.
of small rules or
Yeah.
like not even
Totally.
rules, just like acceptable things where I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, like calm down. Like,
Well, and I think minus like some sort of like ADHD or something. I know those that can affect how children behave and stuff, but take out those, like if your kids are relatively like you can trust them to do like the right tasks, then you don't have to give them a lot of rules, and you can just kind of like guide them more than give them rules. You know what I mean? I'm not a parenting expert, but that's what's worked for me. And
right. I definitely give her guardrails. And I know because my mind always goes to the fact that, when she's 18 or when she grows up, she's her own person. She's gonna make her own decisions. And so I can't force. There's very few times I ever like force a decision on her, right? Like ever, because that's not how life's going to work for her.
Yeah.
And so it's not helping her prepare.
Totally.
And so like I let her make her own decisions, right? I'll explain like, and I won't even try to guide her. I won't even try to like lead her to what I want her to do. Like deep down, I want her to do like these things over here. It's gonna be great, right? But like, that doesn't fucking matter what I think. It's not gonna matter.
Yeah.
So like, I do try to explain. Like she asked me about college the other day, which is I was like, that was a weird question to ask. Like I think she like mentioned college and like after high school.
Like,
I was
okay, you're 8.
Fuck? Like, all right, like let's have this conversation. Like, what are your thoughts? What do you mean? Like, where did you hear this, and why do you think that? And like, that whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I just explained different options that I know and see, right?
Yeah.
So you could not graduate high school. You can graduate high school and start working. You can go to a trade school. You can go to a community college. You can go to a university. You can go to masters. You can take a year off and travel. You can start, like, I just like, here's what you can start a business. Like, I'm big on that one. And like, I just like laid out, like, here's what you can do, right?
These are
here's
all your options.
Here's what each of them look like, right? And so, one topic we've been talking about, so like there's this TikTok channel, Salaried Transparent Street, that it's basically like Glassdoor, or they just got sponsored by Indeed, but like they walk around asking people like, what do you do, how much do you make, right? Is like the question.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so like I just started showing her some of the cool videos, because like, so her mom's a teacher, I was a police officer, and now I do like loans and like in social media stuff and run a business, and like I have real estate, and so like I just kind of show her different things, but that helps her see like, I'm a data scientist, I'm a manager, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a whatever.
That's awesome.
And like then she asked about like, well, how much does college cost? I'm like, well, it's for the 4-year degree, it's relatively the exact same. Like if you go to the same school, it's relatively very, very the exact same, but you get to pick your degree. Well, what degree do you need for this one? Well, you typically need this degree or that degree or this. And it's like, but that one makes a lot more. I'm like, it does make a lot more, doesn't it, Ellie?
Yeah.
Like, it does. Like,
it does.
Come to her own conclusions. And it does. But you have to like what you do.
Yeah, totally.
There's not many careers that require a 4-year degree, right?
Yeah.
Like as far as like the specific skill set you learn in your 4 years degree is directly applicable to your thing. Anyways, I had a huge tangent I can go off of. But like,
no, I went to university and don't use my degree, so I get it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So like, but like on the topic of kiddos, like, easy kid. Man, I could talk about all these things all day long, but okay. To bring it back in, to kind of round this whole interview out, this whole conversation, if someone was just recently widowed, for whatever reason they were widowed, what's one piece of, a couple pieces of advice you would give them on like what to do next, right? Whether they're 1 day removed from widow or 1 year removed from widow, but they feel kind of stuck.
That's a really good question. I think one thing that so many people told me, and I hated it, but now looking back, I'm like, oh, that's great advice, is to not make any major life decisions in the first year. Let me just tell you, I dated someone about like 10 months in, and I'm really glad that didn't work out. So my life is very different now than it was that first year. So I think your life just changes so much, and it evolved so much in that first year. And I'm like I'm the same core person, but I'm really very different than I was like 3.5 years ago when that happened. So I think giving it a good solid year, even longer if you can. Like 2 years out, I was different than I was 1 year out. 3 years out, I was different than 2 years out. So I think like just give yourself time, especially before dating, before like selling your house, unless there was like some big trauma. I know a lot of like suicide widows specifically had the suicide in their house, and so they have to move, like, or they want to stay because of that, whatever you have to do. But if there's not some big trauma, like try not to move, try not to change your kids' schools, try not to do anything too drastic in that first year, if at all possible. Obviously, finances come into play there, like family support comes into play. There's lots of different things that can affect that. But if you can, just stay as stable as possible. And I think that's like a good rule for the next 10 years for your kids, is just keep them as stable as possible. Another thing I would say is to get your ass in therapy immediately. I don't care what he died from or she died from, if you're a widower. I don't care if it was like cancer that they had for 10 years or if it was like a car crash that happened suddenly one day. Right. Get in therapy. Get some help, because everybody needs therapy at some point in their life, literally everyone. No matter how you lose your spouse, it's traumatic. And you're going to have to learn how to only parent your kids and guide your kids through that. So get in therapy, get your kids. Winnie started therapy 2 weeks after Denny died. She was 3 years old. And she is like, you could ask anyone who knows her, she's the most emotionally intelligent 6-year-old you ever meet in your life. It's like a little weird. That. She calls me out in my shit sometimes. So
I love that though. It's just like being aware. I love that.
Yeah. Oh, she's so emotionally aware. So good about it. So, I think those would be like the two main things. And then, here's one other really good one. Ask for help. And like, just be okay with that. You're going to need a lot of help for a while. I will literally, like, I cannot tell you the amount of furniture that I've moved myself and broken some of it because I'm doing it by myself because I'm a 5'2" small person. I will do whatever I can do without help, but sometimes I have to have help, and I have had to learn how to ask for it and be okay with getting it. I hate being the person that needs to be helped, but I have to remind myself that, like, it's not my fault I'm here. It's not my kids' fault we're here. If I don't accept help, I'm not going to be a good enough mom for them, and they're not going to thrive. So if I can accept help, get breaks, get support, get someone to help move my furniture for me, get, whatever it is, like even people who made like little snack bags of veggies for me, cut up veggies for me that first year, like things like that made such a huge difference in my like mental health and being able to survive. And like, I just had to learn to be like, please, yes, I'll take it. Like, rather than being like, I'm fine, I can do this myself, which is my nature. So I think widows and widowers have to learn how to accept help. And it's hard, but you just have to do it and get over yourself.
Get over yourself. I love that. Yeah. No, it's good. That's great advice. I hope anyone that needs to hear that hears that somehow. I'll make that a clip for social media to post on there. That's a great one. Again, thank you for being here. This is an amazing conversation. I do love this. Like this, it's such a topic that is not talked about. There's not a lot of people talking about it. I love diving into these types of things, and it's because it's so helpful. I feel like, and it's one thing that I took away that I forget is like is the fact that it's going to repeatedly come up whenever you have to fill out paperwork for school, for sports, for doctors, or
about me at school.
When they get married and have kiddos.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those things. So it's like like it happens once, but like it's ongoing, and so you have to have like these stress management techniques and coping mechanisms to just. It is what it is. Like this is your life.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Get over yourself and like what's next? What are we gonna do? Like how are we
Suck
gonna
it
solve
up.
this? That whole thing.
Go to some therapy.
Up, right? Like
just handle your shit. Yeah.
Process it. Cool.
Yeah.
This is the new life.
Yeah,
Fuck.
and it's okay to have a freaking meltdown if you have to. Like, that's okay. Yeah. I still have meltdowns 3.5 years later, and I'm into 4 years of therapy deep. Like, I am, like, very self-aware, trying to be, I am, like, at my best self that I feel like I've ever been, and I have lots of support, and I've built this great system, and I still have meltdowns. Like, I had a month last month that I was just a mess, and, like, that's okay. Then I wake up after that month and I get my shit together and I get moving again. So it's just what you have to do, you know?
It's okay, people. It is
Yeah.
okay. Moving forward. You got to keep moving forward. You got to keep
Yep.
just stepping up. So
Yep.
I love that. All right. Well, is there anything they can do to support you? Buy like merchandise, or like do you have anything to sell people? I love giving you a chance to plug yourself.
I got told recently that by a hater that I have a cult, because every time someone says something mean about me, I have like 25 people go to defend me very harshly. And so I'm like, I guess I need a merch line if I have a cult. Like, you can't be a cult and not all wear the same clothes. So I'm going to work on a merch line. And it just seems like the right thing as myself as a cult leader, what I should do next. And
there you go, right?
and just support my social media, share my stuff if it resonates with you, if it helps you in any way, like share it, follow me. I'm on TikTok, Instagram. On Facebook is my most followers. I have like 90,000 there. So and then Instagram and then TikTok is growing slowly but surely. So, but just following me and sharing it. TikTok is DA Bates Fam, like Da Bates Fam. I don't know why I did that. I thought I was cool. I'm not a cool person. And then Danny.Bates on Instagram, and then just Dani Bates on Facebook. So Bates is the last name. So
Bates. Love
Yep.
it. Cool. All right. So, well, sweet. Well, I appreciate you being here. I love the conversation.
thank you so much for having me.
It's going to help a lot of people. I really believe that. So
Yeah, I think so too. I hope so.
Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.